I'm Abigail, 25, the eldest sister who kept my family's lights on with a carpenter's sweat and a heart too big for my own good, until the night I broke free. Imagine my little brother Noah, 19, and cocky as ever, tearing into a shiny pickup truck at his graduation party while our parents crowed, "You'll do great things!" Busted. Me, I got rags and cleaning solution, a cruel joke after years of skipping sleep to pay their bills and tutor Noah through school. Mom smiled and said, "Help out more, Abby." And Noah snickered. That cut deeper than I could bear. I packed my bag, left a note under a thunderstorm's roar, and walked away from the only home I'd known. But the real sting came later. Those rags hid a loan they took for Noah's truck, expecting me to stay their quiet cash cow. I scratched out a new life in Stonehaven, shaping wood into something mine, until they hunted me down, ragged and pleading. I slipped them money in secret, not for them, but for me, until Noah sold that truck and turned everything upside down. My story's raw: betrayal, fight, and a hard-won peace. Come hear it. The summer heat clung to everything as I leaned against the porch railing of our weathered wooden house in Willow Creek, watching the yard come alive for Noah's graduation party. Cicadas buzzed a relentless chorus, their drone mixing with the chatter of neighbors clutching lemonade glasses. My little brother, 19, and swaggering like he'd hung the sun, stood by the gift table, his lanky frame drawing smiles and backslaps. I brushed sweat from my forehead, my arms heavy from sanding a table that morning, a sturdy oak piece I'd sold to cover this month's electric bill. Dad's hours at the mill had shrunk last year, and I'd picked up the slack ever since, but no one mentioned my work. Not today, not ever. Mom swept out with a tray of deviled eggs, her apron streaked with flour, while Dad wrestled a "Congrats, Noah!" banner into place, its uneven letters fluttering. I'd spent years keeping us fed, nights over lumber, tutoring Noah through algebra he barely cared about. And today, I let a flicker of hope creep in that they'd finally see me. The gift table sagged under a heap of envelopes and boxes wrapped in bright paper, a testament to Noah's easy charm. He ripped into the biggest one first, a joint effort from Mom and Dad. The crowd sucked in a breath as he pulled out a set of keys, silver and sparkling in the sunlight. "No way!" he hollered, sprinting to the driveway where a red pickup truck gleamed, fresh off the lot, the kind of thing we'd never dreamed of affording. Dad thumped his back, voice loud with pride. "You'll do great things, son!" Mom darted over, wrapping him in a tearful hug, and the neighbors erupted in cheers that swallowed the cicadas' hum. I stayed by the railing, hands deep in my pockets, each cheer a weight pressing on my chest. I'd patched roofs, stretched dinners, sat up with Noah until dawn to get him through school, and they gave him a truck. My turn came next. Mom handed me a small box, her smile thin, distracted. "For you, Abby," she said, already glancing at the cake. I peeled back the paper, my pulse quickening with a dumb, desperate hope. Inside were rags, gray and frayed, paired with a bottle of cleaning solution, the kind that reeks of bleach. My breath caught, the box trembling in my hands. "You should help out more around the house," Mom said, her voice casual, like she'd handed me a treasure. Noah snickered, a quick cutting sound, and a few guests laughed, their eyes flicking away. I couldn't look up. My throat burned, and I swallowed hard, forcing out a shaky thanks. The words tasted like ash. I turned on my heel, clutching the box, and pushed through the screen door into the house. The kitchen smelled of Mom's peach cobbler, cloying and warm, but it twisted my stomach. I set the box on the counter, the bottle clinking against the rags, and gripped the edge, my knuckles whitening. Outside, Noah's "Nice one, Abby, you can polish my truck," sliced through the chatter, followed by more laughter. I pressed my lips tight, blinking back the sting in my eyes. This wasn't just rags. It was every night I'd traded sleep for their bills, every callus I'd earned, every dream I'd shoved aside to prop Noah up. They didn't see me, the carpenter, the fixer, the sister. They saw a mop, a paycheck, a shadow. I climbed the stairs to my room, the steps creaking under my boots, each one louder than the last. My space was cramped, walls patched with my own fixes, floorboards worn from years of pacing. The bed sagged against one wall, my tools strewn across a desk I'd built from scrap pine. I dropped onto the mattress, the box's weight still heavy in my mind. Thunder growled outside, clouds piling up thick and fast, darkening the sky. I'd been their anchor, roof repairs, Noah's grades, bills paid in silence, while they draped Noah in glory. That truck wasn't just a gift, it was a line drawn, me on one side, them on the other. I couldn't keep pouring myself out for people who'd never fill me back. Rain started tapping the roof, then hammering it as I hauled my duffel from under the bed. I'd packed it once after a screaming match with Dad, but never followed through. This time was different. I stuffed in jeans, a flannel, my favorite chisel, the one Grandpa gave me before he passed, its handle smoothed from his grip. My hands shook. But I didn't stop. I grabbed a scrap of paper, scribbled, "I can't do this anymore," and tossed it onto the pillow. No tears, no second guesses. The storm raged as I slipped out the back door, the party's noise fading under the rain's roar. The yard was empty, guests huddled under the porch, Noah's truck a blurry red glow through the downpour. I kept my eyes forward. My boots churned mud, the duffel thumping against my hip. Lightning flashed, turning the fields stark and silver. I passed the rusted mailbox, following the dirt road out of Willow Creek, rain soaking my hair, my shirt, my bones. My heart thudded, fear and fire warring inside me. Where was I going? Stonehaven stuck in my head, a town 2 hours away. Old Man Carter, a client last spring, had bragged about a carpentry shop there, said they paid fair for good work. It wasn't a plan, just a thread to grab, but it was enough. I couldn't stay, couldn't let them carve me hollow anymore. Thunder cracked overhead, and I kept walking, the sting of those rags slipping away with every muddy step. They'd notice soon enough. Mom would call my name, Dad would swear, Noah might even look up from his keys. But I wasn't waiting for their guilt. I wasn't theirs to keep anymore. I was mine. Rain stung my face as I trudged along the muddy road, Willow Creek's faint light swallowed by the storm behind me. My boots slurped with every step, the duffel thudding against my hip like a stubborn drum. Thunder rumbled, a deep growl mirroring the ache in my chest. I'd gone maybe a mile when headlights pierced the dark, a pickup roaring past, its driver a shadow who didn't slow. I kept my eyes forward. I wasn't ready to be pulled back. Not yet. Stonehaven was my lifeline, 2 hours by car, a lifetime on foot. But Old Man Carter's words clung to me from last spring. "Good shop there, Abby," he'd rasped, pipe smoke curling around him. "They pay fair for real work." It was a whisper of a chance, but I'd built on less. The storm softened after an hour, dwindling to a cold drizzle that seeped through my flannel. My legs burned, my breath fogged in the chill, but I pressed on, the road slicing through endless black fields. A gas station flickered ahead, its open sign buzzing faintly. I stumbled inside, water pooling on the linoleum, and the clerk, a skinny guy with a patchy beard, tossed me a rag. "You're soaked," he said, smirking. I caught it, my lips twitching at the bitter joke, and asked for coffee. He nodded to a pot in the corner. I poured a cup, the steam warming my numb fingers, and handed over $5, my last, for that and a donut hard as wood. "Stonehaven's how far?" I asked, sipping the bitter brew. 2 hours driving, he said, scratching his jaw. "Walking, you're dreaming. Bus comes at dawn." I glanced out at the rain-slicked lot. Waiting meant Mom's voice finding me, shrill and pleading. I couldn't risk it. "Thanks," I muttered, stepping back into the wet night. A trucker pulled in as I left, his rig stacked with logs, and I caught his eye. "Heading to Stonehaven?" I asked, voice steady, despite the shiver in my bones. He grunted, sizing me up. "Climb in. You look like you've had a hell of a night." I hauled myself into the cab, the seat creaking, and asked, "Carpentry work there any good?" He shrugged. Heard Clara's shop does all right. Tough broad, though. We rode in quiet, wipers slapping, the road unspooling beneath us. Dawn painted the sky a dull gray as Stonehaven came into view, a knot of brick storefronts and clapboard homes hugging a sluggish river. The trucker dropped me at a diner, muttering, "Take care, kid," before rumbling off. I pushed through the door, the bell jingling, and sank into a booth, my duffel dripping beside me. A waitress, June, her name tag read, poured coffee, her eyes tired but sharp. "New face," she said, lingering. "Passing through?" I shook my head, cradling the mug. "Heard Clara's got a carpentry shop. Know it?" She nodded. "Down by the mill. She's picky, but if you've got skill, she'll bite. You a woodworker?" I gave a small smile. "Born to it." I found the shop an hour later. A low building with sawdust spilling from the doorway like snow. The clatter of tools greeted me as I stepped inside, nerves buzzing louder than the diner's bell. A woman glanced up from a workbench, 50 or so, eyes keen, hands rough with scars. "What's your story?" she asked, brushing dust from her apron. "Need work," I said, standing taller. "I'm good with wood." She pointed to a chair in the corner, its leg cracked clean through. "Prove it." I dropped my duffel, pulled out Grandpa's chisel, its handle worn smooth, and set to work. The oak was stubborn, but I shaved it clean, braced it tight, and sanded it solid in 20 minutes. Clara watched, arms folded, then gave a curt nod. "Not half bad. Start tomorrow, 10 an hour. Cash till you show me more." Relief washed through me, warm and sudden, but I kept it locked behind a quick, "Thanks." She eyed my bag. "Got a roof?" I hesitated, then admitted, "Not yet." She huffed, almost a laugh. "Upstairs one night. Cot's there, no heat, but it's dry. Earn it, we'll see." I nodded, too worn to argue, and dragged my duffel up creaky stairs to a small room with a bare bulb and a sagging cot. I sank onto it, springs groaning, and unpacked my damp clothes, the crumpled note from my pillow falling out. My phone buzzed, ignored too long, and I fished it free. 6 calls from Mom, 3 from Dad. A voicemail stamped an hour back. I hit play, my stomach nodding. "Abby, where are you?" Mom's voice broke, frantic. "Everything's falling apart. Come home!" Noah muttered behind her. "She's just sulking over those rags." I snapped it off, my jaw tight, and tossed the phone down. Clara's voice floated up later, firm and sure, haggling with a customer over a table. I lay back, the cot creaking, and pictured Noah that first night I'd taught him fractions, his pencil snapping in frustration while I laughed. The memory stung, a thread I couldn't cut. But Clara's nod, that chair, they were mine, not theirs. Stonehaven smelled of mud and pine, not gilt and cobbler. My hands itched to carve, to build something real. Mom's pleas scratched at me, but I shoved them deep. They'd picked their side, and I'd picked mine. Tomorrow, I'd show Clara what I could do. They'd see me, or they wouldn't. I wasn't going back either way. Autumn sharpened the air in Stonehaven as I bent over a workbench, the tang of pine shavings thick in my nose. 3 months had passed since I stumbled into Clara's shop, and my hands had found their rhythm sanding edges, carving lines, piecing wood into things that lasted. That first chair I patched had grown into steady work, a dining table for a farmer, bookshelves for the library, a rocking chair for a widow who slipped me an extra 5 with a shaky smile. Clara kept me at 10 an hour, but she started tossing in a few bucks more for the bigger jobs, her rough, not bad kid ringing in my ears like a medal. The cot upstairs was mine now, a patched quilt thrown over it, my duffel stowed beneath like a quiet promise. Stonehaven's river muttered outside, a steady hum beneath the clang of tools, and I began to feel like I belonged not just to this place, but to myself. That morning, frost sparkled on the windows, and I was smoothing a cedar plank when the shop door crashed open. I glanced up, expecting a customer, but Noah stood there, hair tangled, jacket caked with mud. My chisel slipped, gouging the wood, and my gut twisted tight. "Abby," he said, voice scratched raw, stepping in with boots that smeared dirt across Clara's swept floor. He looked worn thin, eyes shadowed, nothing like the smug kid who jingled truck keys. "What are you doing here?" I barked, dropping the chisel with a clatter that rang off the walls. He shrank back, hands diving into his pockets. "They're falling apart, Abby. Mom's crying nonstop. Dad's hollering at the walls. The house is a dump. You've got to come home." His words cut deep, and I stared at him, the cedar's sting anchoring me. "They sent you to haul me back?" I asked, voice taut like a wire. He shook his head, kicking at a lump of mud. "No, I hitched here, 2 days sleeping in ditches. Heard a guy at the gas station jawing about a girl carpenter in Stonehaven. Knew it was you." I crossed my arms, his grit tugging at me, stirring the memory of him hunched over fractions, grinning when I clapped his shoulder. "Why me?" I stepped closer, boots grinding sawdust. "You've got that truck, so play savior yourself." His face twisted, and he stared at the floor, jaw tight. "It's junk now. Drove it into a ditch, drunk, a month ago. They're raging. The bank's hounding us, Abby. Bills are 3 weeks late, power's flickering. They need you." I let out a harsh laugh, turning back to the bench, my fingers clawing the edge. "They need me? They gave me rags, Noah. Rags. While you got a truck they're choking on." He went still, then mumbled, "Yeah, choking. That's why I came." My hands froze, the air turning thick. I spun slowly, eyes pinning him. "Say that again." He rubbed his neck, voice low. "They took a big loan for it. Bank money. Thousands. Thought you'd stay, keep working, pay it down like always. You left, and it's all caving in." The truth slammed me, heavy as a beam. Those rags weren't an insult. They were a leash, a gamble I'd keep towing their line. Fury blazed up, searing my throat, but a colder ache settled in, betrayal raw and piercing. I grabbed my chisel, knuckles whitening, and thrust it toward him. "They borrowed for you and assumed I'd cover it? That's what help out more meant?" He nodded, miserable, and I smashed the chisel onto the bench, the crack bouncing off the walls. "Get out!" I growled, voice quaking. He didn't move, just stood there, small and broken. "I didn't know till after, Abby. I swear. They're 2 payments from losing the house. I can't fix it." His eyes lifted, wet and desperate, and I saw the kid I hugged when he aced a test after weeks of my coaching. My chest squeezed, but I shook my head hard. "It's not my wreck to salvage, Noah. Go!" Clara's boots thumped in from the back, her voice slicing the tension. "What's this mess? Shop's not your stage." She stopped, glancing from Noah to me, her eyes narrowing. "Brother?" she asked, brisk. I gave a stiff nod. "He's going." Noah opened his mouth, then closed it, shuffling out with a quiet, "I'll tell him you're alive." The bell jangled as he left, silence dropping like a stone. I stood there, breath uneven, the cedar plank swimming in my vision. Clara pressed a clean rag into my hand, her tone gentler. "Wipe your face. You're dripping." I scrubbed it across my forehead, sweat stinging my eyes, the fury still simmering. She didn't push, just went back to her bench, leaving me with Noah's words rattling in my skull. A big loan, house on the brink, they'd shackled me without a word, and I'd snapped the chain blind. That night I took Clara's creaky truck to the hill overlooking town, the river glinting silver under a half moon. Wind lashed my hair as I climbed onto the hood, Noah's slumped frame flashing in my mind. Mom's sobbing voicemail. Dad's voice from years back promising, "Stick with us, Abby, we'll sort it out." They sorted nothing, just stacked more on me, waiting for me to buckle. My fists clenched, the chisel's weight a phantom in my grip. I could go back, clear their debt, be the daughter they forged. Or I could stay, let them stew in their ruin. The wind roared, tugging my jacket, and I slid off, boots crunching gravel, the choice slicing through me, sharp and unmade. 2 years had etched their lines into Stonehaven as I stood in my corner of the shared workshop, the buzz of a lathe humming around me. I'd scratched together enough from Clara's jobs to rent this space, a tight wedge in a brick building near the river, its walls crowded with my tools and half-finished projects. No fancy sign marked the door, just a chalkboard scrawled with custom woodwork in my uneven hand. But the orders flowed steady. Tables, cabinets, a cradle for a young couple who'd beamed at me. Clara still griped when I borrowed her truck, but she'd begun calling me partner after I crafted a display shelf that sold out in days. The cot was history, traded for a one-room apartment above the diner, where June slid me coffee on quiet mornings. Stonehaven's river rolled on outside, its whisper weaving through my days, and I'd built something here, not just furniture, but a life I owned. That crisp fall day, I was sanding a walnut dresser, a special order for the mayor's wife, when the workshop door creaked open. I glanced up, expecting a client, but Mom stepped in, her coat frayed at the edges, Dad close behind with a face grooved deeper by time. My sandpaper stilled, dust drifting in the air, my chest clenching hard. Noah slipped in last, hands deep in his pockets, leaner and quieter than the kid who'd begged me to return. "Abby?" Mom said, voice fragile, stepping forward with eyes that roamed my shop. "We found you." I set the sandpaper down slowly, wiping my hands on my apron. "Wasn't hard," I said, voice steady despite the knot inside. "Stonehaven's small." Dad cleared his throat, rough and low. "We messed up, Abby. Made you carry us too long. Those nights you worked late, those bills we dumped on you. We were wrong." Mom clutched her purse, tears welling. "We pushed you to keep us going, thought Noah's shine would pull us up. We broke you instead. I'm so sorry." Her words cracked open old wounds, specific and sharp, and I felt them settle, heavy but overdue. Noah shifted, eyes fixed on the floor. "Sold the truck last year," he mumbled. "Cleared most of the loan. Work at the gas station now, pumping fuel, mopping floors. It's nothing big, but it's mine." I studied him, the swagger gone, a spark of grit in its place. My mind flashed to that night he'd crashed it, drunk and reckless, the wheel slipping from his hands. I swallowed, a mix of relief and ache stirring. "You sold it?" I asked, softer than I meant. He nodded, meeting my gaze. Dad rubbed his neck, hands restless. "Bank's off us now, but it's tight. We're scraping by, just." Mom reached for my arm, fingers shaking. "Come home, Abby. We're still lost without you." I stepped back, the old pang flaring, then fading fast. "No," I said, firm but calm. "You don't need me. You want me to patch what's left, but I've got this to finish." I gestured to the dresser, its curves gleaming under my touch. "I sent you money, you know. A few $100, no name, that first year. Not to fix you, but to quiet my head. That's over now." Mom's hand dropped, her face crumpling, and Dad stared at the ground, jaw locked. Noah's head jerked up, eyes wide. "That was you?" he asked, voice breaking. I nodded, and he scrubbed his face, a rough laugh slipping out. "Thought it was some do-gooder. Kept the lights on when they cut us off." Dad's throat worked, his voice barely audible. "We didn't earn it, Abby." Mom's tears fell silent, but she didn't argue, just stood there, frail and spent. I turned to the dresser, picking up the sandpaper, its bite familiar in my palm. "You're holding up now," I said, sanding a slow stroke. "Late, but you are. Noah's pulling weight. You're managing. That's more than I figured." Mom opened her mouth, but I lifted a hand, cutting her off. "I'm not going back. This shop, this town, it's mine. You've got your own road now." The silence stretched, thick and final, until Dad gave a slow nod, heavy with something like surrender. "We'll leave," he said, voice a whisper. Mom gripped his arm, wiping her eyes, and Noah shot me a look, half regret, half a flicker I couldn't name. "Take care, Abby," he said, and they shuffled out, the door groaning shut. I watched through the window as they climbed into a battered sedan, its engine sputtering to life, and rolled off down the river road. I stood still, sandpaper limp in my hand. The workshop hushed but for the river's song. The leash I'd dragged, that tangle of guilt and duty, slid off me, light as dust. I thought of Noah at the pump, Mom's tears, Dad's empty words. They'd shaped me, but they didn't hold me anymore. I set the sandpaper aside and lifted a chisel, its handle smoothed by Grandpa's hands, then mine. The walnut dresser glowed, sturdy and mine, a piece of something I'd forged from scraps. Later, I climbed to my apartment, the diner's warmth seeping through the floor. I sank into my oak chair, a rough thing I'd made last winter, and gazed at the river, silver beneath the fading sun. Those rags, that truck, the loan, they'd been a trap, but I'd broken free. Built this instead. I didn't hate them, not now. They'd stumbled onto their own legs, and I'd grown mine. The chisel lay in my hand, a quiet anchor, and I smiled, small but true. Freedom wasn't just leaving, it was standing here, whole, with a dresser bound for the mayor's house and a life I'd carved myself. Looking back, my story isn't just about leaving rags and a truck behind. It's about finding myself after those nights I refused to turn back. I learned freedom isn't just walking away. It's planting your roots deep, building a life with your own sweat and wood, even when old voices beg you to stay. My family piled their weight on me, but I grew strong by letting it fall. Crafting a shop in Stonehaven from Will and Munkua. They tripped, crashed, then stood on their own, not because I pulled them up, but because I stepped aside. That's what I hold close. You can't bear every burden forever. Sometimes you drop the stone to breathe free. I'm tougher now, freer too, with a chisel in my grip and a space that's mine. What about you? Have you ever set down a heavy stone to feel lighter? What did you do when the choice was yours? Forgive them, walk off, or find a middle ground? I'd love to hear your tales, what you faced when the load got too much, so share them with me if you want. It's been a gift telling you this, and I'd love to swap stories again someday over coffee and dust. See you then. Stay strong.